Hello and welcome back to The Marketing Hustle. If this is your first time here, I'm your host, Lottie. And where have you been? We've recorded so many episodes now. If you love hearing unfiltered stories from bold brands on how they do their marketing, you're in the right place. Today, I chatted to Imme Ermgassen, founder of Bativo, big sipping botanical aperitivo. This isn't just non-alc, this is a whole other drink and a brand that is really taking the industry by storm. I've known about Imme for a really long time, back when she was working on insights and strategy at Flamingo, and have followed her career quite obsessively since then. So we're talking like a decade of fandom. Today, we talked about the framework for building great brands, their brand platform, Artisanal Hedonism, which I just think is the most powerful phrase, how to genuinely stand out, and a bit about being a founder and a mum of twins with a big old job. She's got a lot going on. I really hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. This episode is brought to you by Be a Bear. Be a Bear specialise in growing audiences. They believe that the best way to build any business is with an engaged and excited audience. And over the past 6 years, they've worked on strategies to support local startups through to global super brands. This year, they've delivered projects for Molton Brown, Red Bull, MTV and Channel 5, to name a few, and they're currently working with a couple of brands from the Upworld community to help build their market awareness. Go and check them out. For now, back to the show. All right. Thank you so much for coming.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. We've got some drinks to try later. Excited to tuck into this in a bit. I want to hear about your very big job. So I read somewhere that you do marketing strategy, sales. You're CEO. You're also mum of twins.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do it all?
That is a good question. So I have, should I explain what Bativo is first? Because it probably, what will people know? Because it might help explain.
I think they might know, but maybe give us a quick.
I'll give you a quick one just because obviously, depending on if people don't know.
Yeah, I like to assume that
we are
educated.
So it's
audience.
a sort of big sipping botanical aperitivo. It's non-alcoholic. The reason why I'm saying it is because obviously that determines my different roles. And it takes a year to make. It's a super craft liquid. I think we are in like 30 Michelin stars, like 35 of the top 100, Whole Foods, etc. But I have a business partner called Sam who makes it. So it's quite rare to make liquids in our category yourself. Normally they're kind of outsourced to sort of fragrance houses or like factories. So the reason why I'm telling you is because obviously that impacts my role massively because Sam does all the product making and all the operations.
Of course, because you have a co-founder, but that co-founder split of roles and responsibilities is quite unusual.
Exactly, quite unusual because I think normally you have a couple of co-founders and someone else makes the liquid and you work together on different elements. But Sam's and my roles are quite split. We work together really well, but he does all operations, makes all the products, just the magic basically, because the product's delicious. And that leaves me to do like the investment raising, the marketing, the sales, the kind of company culture stuff, because I'm in the office a lot while he's actually at the farm, which is separate. So yeah, how do I do it? It's a good question. I think probably feeling quite sort of like low-key stressed quite a lot, but like try not to let people like
just
realise
the high-level anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. I think you do sort of different patches. So I have got a team now which are amazing. We've got I think there's 10 of us now, and so there's 2 in marketing, 4 in sales that I'm working with, and then Sam. So actually, it's getting easier and easier because the more those guys learn and the more they grow, which is really fast because they're so smart and motivated, the more they're actually coming up with ideas and leading everything themselves. So I think it's kind of actually getting easier than it has been for the last 2 years when I started.
How long has this brave new world of team been?
So me and Sam both only went full time July last year actually. So it was kind of the first, which people don't really realise, the first year and 2 months I was also a consultant on the side to make money, and then doing like Bativo as well. So I was always doing like brand consultancy, consumer work, sort of helping build brands for everyone from like Heineken to Adidas to Nike. So I was doing that on the side and then trying to grow and raise investment for Bativo. And then when we raised investment the first time, then we both went full time. So that was only July last year.
And then when you went full time, you started hiring at the same time.
Then we actually hired, that we had a junior salesperson join just before that. And then the first person, maybe March the following year. Yeah, March, sort of a year ago, basically.
Okay, so you've gone from doing all the marketing to now managing the marketing. And that's been that's helped that low-level anxiety drop a little bit?
Yeah, no, I would say I still definitely lead the marketing side. But I've got this amazing Kate on my team.
Yeah, she is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, she will,
who I know, yes.
She'll be better than me in like a year. Yeah, exactly. She went on she did your day and was like mega impressed. But she's just one of those like really big visionaries, and like she just sort of comes back with loads of amazing ideas. We work really well together. We bounce ideas off each other. She's also a bit cooler and a bit younger than me, which means that she helps me keep things relevant. And yeah, she just kind of amazes me every day with like new ideas. So that makes the whole marketing side like just so much easier. And I think we've worked so hard on creating such a tight strategy in terms of like the brand positioning and what we stand for and how we rub up against the category. And that means that everyone on the team is so clear on what we're trying to do and, you know, and how to behave and who we want to partner with and, you know, how we want to show up in culture. And that clarity has meant that it's actually really easy to let people go and do stuff themselves because they all really understand what we can do and what we can't do from a brand point of view.
Okay. So there was many reasons why I was keen to meet, because we connected like a million moons ago, and then I've kind of watched your career. But the Bativo marketing feels leagues above the size of brand that I sense you are and kind of where you're at in your distribution journey. There's just this like incredibly exciting feeling as an observer to be like, where's this going to go? Because the packaging design, like the consistency with which you do everything, the feeling that every activation could only be you, just feels way above
so great.
Where you should be. No, it's just thrilling. And like, we talk about it loads as a team, like you just get referenced amongst my team all the time. And that to me is really exciting. And so I kind of wanted to, basically this is like a glorified excuse for me to be like, how? What are you doing? So the tight strategy feels like the core of it, but tell us more about that, how you got there, what it is and what it means.
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So I think I'm a massive believer that like you have to create a brand first. And actually that brand has to be connected to the liquid that you're creating. So actually, in a way, they have to be created at the same time. And I think often people decide, I want to go into a category and then I'm going to try and create a brand for it. But we created the rebrand, which launched in March last year. That was sort of water tight by the time we sort of relaunched. And how we got there was I basically tried the liquid before I rebranded it because Sam had created it for these like quite hedonistic parties that he did his other business for. And
was it a new liquid?
So it was a liquid that he created for these events that he does for his other business.
Okay, and you tried that and thought, this needs a brand.
Yeah, well, he had just started bottling it because people kept saying to him at the parties, like, where do I buy this delicious liquid? And it was an events company that he makes, you know, he creates all the bars and the drinks for it. So he had just bottled it, and it was a sort of cottage industry that, you know, they were doing a website and they were selling it, and I tried it and just became completely obsessed with it. I was like, this is so delicious, I have to be part of it. So I wrote him, I kind of bang on about it a lot, but I basically wrote him a proposal for how I wanted to take the brand and rebrand it and put it in a new bottle and, you know, make it sort of a big global, you know, big energy brand. And luckily he sort of bought into it. But the reason why I say that is because that's actually where the strategy began. Because when I was pitching to him where I wanted the brand to go, I did a big kind of analysis of 4 things that, again, I always talk about, and it's something that we did a lot in my agency's job when I was working in branding, which was looking at 4 key areas. So you look at, you know, what's happening in culture. So what are the big shifts happening? Because you want to always make sure that when you're creating a brand that you're talking to the emerging side of culture. You don't want to be talking to what's happening right now. You want to be talking to where things are moving, because that's going to give you the longevity to kind of move ahead with times. And the second one is looking at the category. So what's everyone else doing in your category? Like, you know, and that for us was soft drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, you know, everything sort of in those surrounding categories. What are they doing, and, you know, how can you push up against that in some way? And the third one was your consumer, right? Who's your consumer? And I think people often think, you know, people who drink non-alcoholic drinks like really young, and it's 20, 25-year-olds. And actually, that's not the experience that we've had for this brand. And we decided, you have to basically think, who is your consumer? And you have to build a brand for that consumer. And then the fifth one is looking at your brand or your product and thinking, what can we do authentically that no other product can do in that space, whether it's the liquid, whether it's, the way it's made, etc. So it's a very long-winded way of saying...
No, it's really helpful.
That basically, when I built the brand, to give you sort of my thinking for Bativo, was I looked at culture and I was like, what was going on in culture? And for me, there's this feeling of like, life is so shit, basically. Like, no one can buy houses, no one can do anything fun, like the weather's rubbish, but it just feels like the economy is low, like everyone's got anxiety. And then to then go and say to people, oh, you also, by the way, can't drink alcohol, or like, can you also just moderate and hold back? Just feels like a bit of a kick in the teeth. So we wanted to rub up against that and be like, okay, you know what? If the world is sort of really low, we actually want to be a brand that's about surprise and delight. It's about lifting people, not about then saying they can't do something they want to do. So that was the kind of cultural piece. Then the category piece was everyone was talking about moderation. Everyone was saying, drink for tomorrow, or what to drink when you're not drinking, or, feel good tomorrow, like, don't ruin it. And again, we're not a moderation brand, we're a pleasure brand. So we were like, okay, we're not going to remind people about moderation the whole time, because frankly, if you're buying a non-alcoholic drink, you've already decided to moderate. So we decided to do the opposite, which is pleasure. So we pushed against that and was like, if everyone else is talking moderation, we're going to talk about taste and pleasure and like playfulness. And then with our consumer, everyone assumed that they're really young, and actually we were like, our consumers like, probably 35 to 50. Yeah. And it was like understanding who they are, who's going to be really into this product. And this product and the liquid is really intense, it's really hedonistic, it's really rich, it's really powerful. And so the people who like it are people they're not people who are counting calories or, like holding back in life. They're pleasure seekers, right? They're people who love how food and drink are made. We don't have flavorings or preservatives, anything in our product, right? So it's people who love quality ingredients, who love stories, who love makers, of drinks and those kind of stories. So that was who our consumer was. It wasn't the calorie counter non-alc drinker. It's actually sort of a hedonistic character who actually probably drinks alcohol, but is also just exploring lots of different sort of options.
Just delicious food and drink.
Just delicious food and drink
within that category, yeah.
Exactly, and like, I don't see Bativo as an alcoholic product. I see it as just something that I drink when I want something delicious, and that's a massive difference in mindset, right? I'm not like, oh, I want a glass of wine. Oh, okay, I'm going to have Bativo. I come back from work and I'm like, I just want a Bativo right now. Anyway, and then the fourth one is, if you're going to talk to a brand story, you have to authentically be able to claim that from a product point of view. And so the reason why we could claim this idea of like pleasure and like foodies and all that stuff was because the liquid takes a year to make, because there's no flavorings or essences or preservatives, because it's really punchy, it's like cordial, like in intensity, and it is super, super craft. So we can authentically claim all those things. Well, if we were made in a sort of fragrance house somewhere, we can never talk about, we can authentically claim to foodies that these are like quality real ingredients and that, there's this process involved, because it wouldn't be true.
Yeah.
So in a very long-winded way, those are the four things that I would think about, and then together they kind of create your brand story and make sure that you're finding a gap in the market, but that also you're resonating emotionally with consumers.
And that all makes total sense, and I think the framework is actually really helpful. That then gets summarized into something like, is there a Bible that you will work off? Because I think what's interesting is how often that first bit of thinking isn't quite tight enough. So that might sort of be in place, but there isn't the level of clarity or conviction in any of those four areas. Yeah. And then there's definitely no tight summarizing, or the summarizing that happens actually kind of says nothing. It just becomes like a non-position. Yeah,
we built a position, so that basically went into a brand positioning, which was tight from sort of day one. So the sort of the internal brand positioning that we talk about, which I created before we and that was the brief for the brand, was artisanal hedonism, and it was the idea of like something that is got, you know, the artisanry and the attention to detail and the excellence of an artisan, but has like this like really hedonistic, pleasurable sort of world of a hedonist. And that was what we internally sort of brief. And so, you know, that guides, well, our values all come from that as well, our brand values, but it guides everything from the partnerships we do to the influencers we might work with to how we show up at different touch points. So, you know, we want to bring people together through like surprise and delight, and that's part of our kind of brand purpose. So we're never going to show up and just be at a sampling with a tray. We want to make sure that every touch point that anyone experiences the brand is like really sort of hedonistic and pleasurable, because that's our brand. So hence the piano, you know, which you'll have seen all over.
Iconic piano.
The piano, which is basically, for those that haven't seen it, we have a yellow piano on our label. We basically built that in real life, like a big theatrical sort of version of it. And it's actually just a keyboard with a frame that we built, and it opens up into a bar, but it's on wheels. But it means that we do these amazing sing-alongs, events when people come and taste the product, and they have like a really like they come together and have this moment which is normally only reserved for alcohol, right? Like, you know, that kind of sing-along moment is normally everyone's pissed at the pub and a song comes on or whatever. And it's kind of been reappropriated by the piano. And it means that whenever we show up in culture, in samplings, people are having this amazing time. And that's kind of what I mean. Like, we knew from day one that whenever there was a touch point, it had to have that feeling about it. It couldn't just be, here's a tray, try my drink.
Your background is in insights.
Yeah, exactly. Strategy and insights, exactly. So I did a lot of consumer work when I was...
Yeah, so the strategy I can see in spades. How is your like growing up in insights influenced the product you've built and the brand you've built? And I asked that because it's just never done. It's every other brand is built on a hunch, and I feel like yours is different.
I mean, it's been a massive part of it, like, because you know, again, like the way of thinking and understanding the space, understanding how you can be different to everyone else, that all came from building strategic frameworks for other brands and talking to consumers and trying to understand them, trying to understand who the customer for the specific brand was, like what made, you know, them connect with that brand. And just also understanding really important things like, and I think this, you know, one of the questions that people, you know, what makes a great marketer? And I think people who realize that their consumer isn't them is basically like a number one thing. And I think when you've grown up working in consumer insight and you through your 20s, you get to sit in on focus groups, you get to moderate focus groups, you get to do ethnographies, and you basically see people from every walk of life. And you also just realize that, you know, the customer isn't you, and they're actually very different, and the needs they have is very different. And so understanding that customer is really key. And I think there's been so many times when I was working on agency side where we'd be in a meeting with like a 50-year-old sort of guy, and he'd be like, well, I asked my 12-year-old kid last night and he said that he didn't like that, so, you know, so we're not going to go ahead with it. And I was like, you're a 50-year-old white dude who's not talking, you know, about like a sort of completely different issue, and you've asked one person that you know who probably is from the same world as you, and that's your strategy. And so I think growing up in that, you realise very quickly that like you need to go out and talk to people, and you need to really understand and be the brand that understands your consumer better than anybody, because that is what's going to give you the edge, basically.
It's much harder for you to go and find 30 to 40-year-olds, but it's not that hard for you to go and stand outside some delis.
Yeah, and be like, wow, you're a pleasure seeker.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
come and chat to me.
Self-defined, you know, you're at the cheese stand at the farmer's market, you're probably in my like demographic segmentation.
100%. And I think for me, and I sort of always bang on about it, it's a mindset, not an age thing. And I think there's actually this amazing woman that I interviewed, I think she's called Jane Evans, who I interviewed when I was doing a sort of I was doing actually a gender equity project for one of the big brands, and I was a consultant. And she's basically created an agency for like midlife women. And her whole thing is like, why are, you know, people in their sort of midlife onwards, you know, they lose their jobs, like they're treated badly at work, but also mainly like the way that they are portrayed in culture is so not what, you know, people who are 40 plus, you know, are like. And her whole vibe is like, can we just realize it's 2024 and actually this world is full of like vibrant, curious, pleasure-seeking, 40 to 80-year-olds, and the way that they're portrayed with little granny sticks and grey hair is just not reflective of real life.
This has become quite a fun, like a recurring theme in these podcasts. So, like, every brand is designed for Sophie, who's 27 and lives in Clapham.
Yeah.
We're over it. Like, there are probably 1,000 of her. She's skint because I was her, and that's not a fun time in your life.
Yeah.
And like, definitely I'm not trying this like huge plethora of new food and drink brands that are all only theoretically talking to me. So I can like, it's just so funny how it keeps coming up from different angles. It's really nice to hear it's a recurring conversation. But actually what it's getting at is some quite profound ageism.
Massive
like
ageism.
The marketing industry's got some stuff to apologise for.
I mean, it's like, it is sort of this unspoken thing. Like, it feels like everything else is being addressed, but this ageism is absolutely not. And actually, interestingly, when I was developing the Bativo brand, I don't know if you've seen on our label, there are, maybe there's like 8 characters, but actually in the brand world, there are like 21 characters. And actually this ageism thing came up because we worked really hard with Rosalina Bakova, this artist, to create these characters which were really representative. So different genders, different sexes, different ethnicities, different ages, different sizes. And my favourite character is one called Daisy, who, if you look, I think it's on our website, but she's must be maybe a 60-year-old lady wearing like white Crocs, and she's just got her sort of, she's chilling, chatting to her mate, just drinking like a glass of wine, and she's like absolutely loving life. And the point is that like, I was like, that's going to be me when I'm her age. Like,
I can't wait to be Daisy.
Yeah. Like, that's what I want to be seeing. I want to be seeing characters who are 60 that look like that and who are just having a bloody lovely time, and not someone with a walking stick, like walking along, because that's not realistic. And so we sort of work to bring in these characters into the world, which are reflective of 2024 and actually what people are like, today. And that ageism thing was really on my mind, because I just wanted to make sure that we weren't just creating a world for, what the media portrays older people to be, not even older, like my age plus, Like, I'm also, I'm a 40-year-old woman with 2 kids, with twins. Like, I can't relate to any of a lot of the sort of mother narratives, even at 40, that are portrayed about me, because that's not how I define my identity. So it's something which it needs a lot of work. Yeah.
I'm obsessed that you have 21 characters and a brand world that developed. Was that incredibly expensive?
No, because Rosalina Bakova is our illustrator. She's a friend of mine. And she's also a deeply talented artist. And I've admired her work for years, basically. And she's got lots of different styles, actually, but one of her styles is she creates these amazing banquet scenes. And, I've always admired them, because whenever I've looked at the banquet scene and the characters, I've always been like, God, I wish I was at that party.
Yeah.
And I think everyone has that feeling about them. Like, it doesn't matter, who you are. So she was the obvious choice because, as I mentioned, Bativo, the liquid, was born out of these quite hedonistic parties that Sam was working at. We wanted our consumers are sort of hedonists. So she was an obvious person to work with on it. And we built 21 characters. We looked at sort of who we wanted to make sure we represented. And actually Cass, from Proper, who you spoke about earlier, she's actually one of our characters.
Wow.
Because we have named each of the characters after people that we know.
Wow.
So there's like lots of like thoughts gone into it. So there's actually a pregnant lady in the world, and obviously doesn't look like Cass, but she's called Cass. And she's Cass, the CEO. And again, going back to that idea of like pregnant women are always there, like, portrayed in a very,
yeah,
exactly. And this woman's like dancing in the world, and and she's a CEO, and that's like. So when we think about our brand and we talk about our characters internally, that's how we frame that character. We don't frame them as like, oh, the sad pregnant woman in the corner, rubbing her belly. And so Cass kind of inspired that and the energy for that. But anyway, what was I talking about?
You were talking about how you My question was, is it very expensive?
Oh, sorry, yes.
And
yes,
the context for that was, it's amazing, but I feel like everyone's going to go,
yeah.
That was
no, it wasn't
more than we have to spend. And
no.
I suspect it's not.
The answer is it wasn't expensive. So I was just like getting carried away thinking about all the characters.
Which was such a magical tangent. I want to meet them all.
Anyway, no. So we worked with Roz to develop all the characters, and then we basically bought the license for them. So we bought the illustration and we bought the license for them. So we own the characters, which actually is kind of an amazing thing because we can use them in whatever way we want across anything forever, and it's a one set and it's a one-off fee, and it was a few thousand.
And so you've got to incredibly, I don't want to use the word expensive because that feels like it's not doing it justice. Like an incredibly high standard of brand creation that feels like a very premium, meticulously made global brand. Yeah. And what I'm hearing is that that's a combination of you having brand strategy skills, which I think is really important.
Yeah,
Plus
having clarity, exactly.
Having clarity, having a vision, and then some contacts help. But actually, if you've got the vision, it's like then you find the right people and you're clear on what you want from that deal, and you're not, it's not a terrible brief, then that process can be really streamlined.
Exactly. I mean, I think honestly, clarity is the most important thing from day one. And I think like also another thing which I just think people always forget about when it comes to like brand building is how like it's just saying things again and again and again very simply to your customers, your consumers. Yeah. And I think someone said to me really on in my career that, you know, if you're bored of something, if you're a brand owner and you think you've said something, and you're bored of it, no one else even knows about it yet.
It's like at that point, one person might have heard.
Exactly. So the problem with the challenge with a lot of founders is that we're all like, oh, new shiny thing, like new idea, like, oh, I know, I'm quite bored of talking about this. But the reality is you have to talk about things for years before anyone even realizes what you're saying. So that's like a key bit of advice that really stuck with me, which is even if you are someone who jumps around like I do, just make sure that you just keep saying the same thing again and again and again in different ways to keep that creativity. But if you're bored of it, no one else, by that point, no one's even heard of it. So don't like give up too quickly.
I think this is such a compelling like business case basically for the need for investment in that strategic clarity. Because you're really, we started with why is your job so big? Because Sam's doing this other co-founder role, but a key part of your job therefore is to manage marketing, and you have the experience and expertise to be able to do that. There are loads of founding teams where that's not what's in that founding team. Yeah. And like I spend my day job is coming into businesses where that work's been shortcut and the cost has been cut. And then the costs stack up at the back end of that process because there isn't the clarity. So that's why it starts to feel terrifyingly expensive, because you've been burnt by an agency before who have done something off a really unclear positioning statement. Yeah. The creative process has been a nightmare because it's like feedback by Frankenstein, not by like, let's refer to what we're actually trying to achieve here. Yeah. And then there's this people get really burnt. And I feel like it's totally fair to say, I'm really burnt by how expensive and overcomplicated, unnecessary this can be. But it doesn't have to be if you just know what you're trying to do. Yeah,
and I think there's also loads of really, really good freelancers now.
Really good, yeah.
I actually know a lot of them, so people do need them. Get that with me, because I've worked on the agency side. I know loads of amazing ones that can help you. I think that marketing, I just think the marketing stuff cannot be kind of undervalued. It is like the most important thing. I think another thing to also note is, because I'm in charge of like raising like investment and money, is that the skill sets that you learn from marketing are actually the same skills you use for like writing an investor deck. And I think like you're basically writing a story, which is what you write in a marketing
compelling
deck,
story and understanding your audience.
Story. So you're talking about, this is what's happening in culture, here's the category, this is the opportunity, this is the size of it, and like this is what we're going to do to get to where we want to get. But actually it's the same skill sets that you need in marketing. So having
Such
that
a good point.
Having that is it's really important for every part of the business. It's not just marketing.
What have you learned about marketing on this journey?
I've learned that. I'll tell you what I have learned, which is because I was not running a business before and I was just in that world of marketing, what I haven't realized is that marketing is way smaller in terms of running a business. There's so much stuff out of your control.
There's a lot else going on.
Yeah, there's lots of other going on, exactly. So I remember, when you're in an agency and you've come up with an amazing idea and you're frustrated that a brand hasn't, taken it and run with it or whatever, you realize when you're a business owner that like there's so many moving parts in a business that it's just not possible often to do those kind of things. They're just like on a very basic level, things like we get messages all the time being like, oh, why don't you try and get into this restaurant? Or why don't you, this is the perfect place for you from a marketing point of view. Why don't you show up here? And you realize that you can't just get into restaurants because there's a whole other system of distributors and wholesalers. And effectively, when you start a drinks brand, you have to get onto wholesalers or distributors. People use different words. Because they supply the restaurants. But they won't even look at you until you've got 30 restaurants that will list you if you are with them. So it's a chicken for the egg thing. So you have to go out and find 30 restaurants that want to list you, and then you need to go to the wholesalers and be like, I've got 30 restaurants, will you now list me? But those 30 restaurants aren't going to give you time until you're already listed with those guys. So it's like the chicken for the egg situation, which is a whole other world outside of marketing, which then, yes, you get in and then you can market. But there's so many other bits within the business that will impact where you show up, which are nothing to do with marketing.
So that's quite a humbling learning curve.
And it's being like, oh, I thought I could just get, oh no, it's like a year of work to get on that.
Oh dear.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you learnt, I think anyone would say like, oh, there's such a learning curve when you like have small budgets and you move into like running a startup. Has that been how you expected?
Yeah, I think like I think you have to be really innovative and creative. Hence, like when we built the piano, we knew that was a really cost-effective way of
that's such a good hack.
Of just doing samplings and things because we can just it cost us a couple of grand to build with the piano and everything, and we've used it for a year and we'll use it for another year. So you just had to find really creative ways to show up. And I think the big challenge is that you're up against all the big brands. And not only just the big brands, a lot of the independent brands are backed by the big brands, whether it's Distill Ventures or other accelerator programs. And so even if a bar or a restaurant loves your product, they're getting listing fees or they've got exclusive partnerships with the bigger companies, and you can't actually go in there, which again is another kind of part that I talked about earlier in terms of things that are outside of marketing that are out of your control. And so that's when budgets that's when you have to start being really creative because they're like, sorry, like we've been paid 10 grand by this company just to get a listing on the menu.
Product's nice, but what?
And like, have you got 10 grand to get? And like, no, obviously, like no, I've got nothing. Yeah, exactly. So then you have to do sneaky, try and get in as an ingredient. Rather than a drink, and then hope that they try it and they like it so much that they put it on as a lead product. So you have to constantly just try and find ways to get into places without a budget, and then hope that someone loves it and go in and just keep sending them recipes and suggestions to inspire them. And that's kind of what we did. We did a lot of like knocking on doors and going to sommeliers rather than the heads of the bars, because the sommeliers would love the liquid, and then they would go to the head of bar and be like, you should actually list this. And because the head of bar respected what sommeliers said, they would listen to them, but they wouldn't listen to us.
Because you just become another commercial conversation.
Yeah, you're just like a salesperson knocking on the door. So you try and give it to people who would then hope that they would be like, this is actually really fucking good. So you have to just constantly think about innovative ways to get to that in person, because money is not the way you're going to get there.
That's amazing. No. You're so right. That is a genuine learning curve. It's not all just as easy as a marketing strategy.
No, and there's no more frustrating email than we absolutely loved your product. It's like the best non-alcoholic drink we've ever tasted, but unfortunately we've got an exclusive deal with whatever. So
it's just such a door shut in your face,
and you're like, oh, okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, it just feels like a wall.
Yeah.
My final question, is there something that someone listening to this can help with? What do you need help with? God,
you know what? The biggest issue that we need help with is, I don't know if anybody listening to this podcast could ever solve this.
You never know. We've solved some
well, I think it's an industry
questions.
Is going back to this distributor problem is when you're listed with the big distributors like Speciality or Venus or these other ones which sell it, which then provide your products to restaurants and bars, you've got no way of knowing where they put you. Which is the ultimate problem for any small brand.
As in what bars you end up in.
Yes, even last night I got a message from someone being like, oh, you're in the, I think it was the Earl of East, I think the pub in Islington. And I was like, oh, right. Because we basically don't know where we are.
So you really need people to tell you when they see you.
Yeah, can everyone just tell me where this is?
Just send them a message and be like, spotted.
Yeah, exactly. There's loads of messages. Because basically when the distributors distribute you, you can occasionally pay for a little list that they send you, but 90% of them will never tell you where you're listed. So you can't then go to that place and be like, this is how you list us on the menu, or this is how you use our product, or anything. You have no idea where you are. And that's the biggest challenge for a new brand, which is you don't even know where your trade customer is often, unless they're coming direct.
And that's because it's not cost effective for the distributor to bother giving you that information.
I think, yeah, they basically will ask for loads of money to do it, which obviously startups won't have. Or they just won't even do it. Like a lot of them just refuse to do it completely. It's just not a service that they offer.
We need to air tag your bottles.
Yeah. Well, that'd be genius.
Can someone make a little tracking device?
Yeah, exactly. So anyone listening, if you see our bottles, let us know where they are, because we'd love to go and talk to the people and tell them all about it.
That's such a nice final thought, because I think there's this. I was at an event last night where we were talking about the power of saying thank you. If you listen to something and you think it's amazing, or you meet someone and you think they're great, or whatever, or you drink something and you think it's wonderful, no one ever just sends that message and says, hi, you have no idea who I am, but I actually really like your product. Because I think as consumers, we're all like, well, that's icky. They get loads of them. They don't need another one. And as founders, we're like, no, we get none. We get one in a blue moon, and it literally makes our week. And I feel like that's another really amazing example of that, which is, I would never think to say to you, I saw you in a pub, because it'd feel lame. And you'd be like, yeah, I know, kind of, this is a business now. Yeah, exactly. I'm over it. But it just feels like such a nice reminder.
Yeah.
Even that, you don't know that either. So
I mean, we didn't even know. We were on Caravan, which obviously is a massive one, and we didn't even know we were on that until it was on the menu, and someone sent it to us, and we were like, "What? Oh my god, we're at Caravan!
It's incredible!
It's a huge
so
milestone."
Funny that's how you're having internal celebrations based off a menu, WhatsApp, pic, a blurry picture. Okay, amazing note to end things on. Do send those messages. Do give us that affirmation.
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming.
Well, thanks for having me. Hope you enjoy the.
I'm so excited. I've embarrassingly never tried it.
You need to get some soda water. So you serve it, because it's really strong. It's cordial, an intensity. That's the kind of, it says 20 drinks in one. So you need to just one part to 7 parts, and then a slice of orange over ice.
This is perfect for my Friday night in. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you loved the episode, please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. It really helps us grow and gets more brilliant guests on for you. Next up, I've got Jeremy from Nice Wines coming over to hear all about the growth of canned wine. Jeremy was an old colleague and we haven't caught up for a long time, so it's going to be a really good gossip. If you want to hear more real insights from the life of a founder in startup marketing, do give me a follow on LinkedIn. I would love to connect. That is a wrap until next time. Remember, you can always get in touch to recommend who we interview next.